Okay, what we're doing today, we are going to be solving quadratic equations using what's called the square root property. So, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that x squared is by itself. So that's step one. Make sure x squared is by itself. So looking at problem number 1, is x squared by itself? Yes. So, to solve for x, we need to get rid of the square. So what is the opposite of square? Square rooting. So that is called the square root property. So we're going to be solving these equations by taking the square root. So if we square root the left side, we need to also square root the right side. And what happens when you square root a square? It cancels. So you bring down the x. So the square root of x squared is x. Now when we square root the right side, what is the square root of 49? 7 is one answer, but there is another number that you could square to also get 49. Negative 7. What's negative 7 times negative 7? 49. So what you need to do today is whenever you take the square root, you're going to have two answers. You're going to have a positive and negative square root of 49. So plus or minus 7. That's the answer.
Oh my God.
So notice at the very beginning, we need to pay attention. Notice that the equation, x is the what power? Second power. How many answers do we have? 2. So you need to have 2 answers today. So when you take the square root, you'll have the positive square root and the negative square root. So that you'll have both answers. Next one, number 2. Step 1 is x squared by itself. No. How do I get rid of that 3? Divide both sides by 3. That gives us x squared equals 9. Now to solve for x, we need to get rid of that square. So what is the opposite of squaring?
Square root.
Square rooting. So we need to square root the left side, square root the right side. And when you square root a square, it cancels. So bring down the x. And what is the square root of 9? How many answers are we supposed to have? 2. So what is the square root of 9? Positive and negative 3. So make sure when you take the square root, you keep the plus or minus so that you include both answers. Next one, number 3. Is the x squared by itself? No. So what would we do first to get the x squared by itself? Add 4 to both sides. That gives us 8x squared equals, what's 196 plus 4? 200. Is x squared by itself? No. How do we get rid of that 8? Divide both sides by 8. So that would be x squared equals 200 divided by 8 is 25. Now x is squared, so we have to get rid of the square. So what is the opposite of squaring? Square rooting. So we need to square root both sides. And what happens when you square root a square? They cancel. They bring down the x. And what is the square root of 25? Positive and negative 5. So those are the 2 answers. Positive and negative 5. Number 4. First step, is the x squared by itself? Yes. So step 2, we need to get rid of the square. So what is the opposite of squaring? Square root it. So we need to square root the left side, square root the right side. And what happens when you square root a square? They cancel. So bring down the x. And how many answers did I have? 2. So this needs to be plus or minus. Is 12 a perfect square? No. So we're right now going to leave it as plus or minus square root of 12. Now your answers need to be in simplest radical form. So is that in simplest radical form? No, so we need to go back to what we just did in Unit 5 with the radicals. We need to simplify that radical.
So it'll be 4 times 2.
So we need the perfect square for 12, and you're right, it would be 4 times 3. Then mark out the 4. What's the square root of 4?
2.
2. So this would be x equals plus or minus 2 square root of 3.
Yes, sir. I like that. That's the answer.
That's the answer. Make sure your answer is in simplest radical form. Number 5, first step, is the x squared by itself? Yes, now we have to get rid of the square, so what's the opposite of squaring?
Square root.
Square root. So we need to square root the left side, square root the right side. What is the square root of x squared? X equals, and how many answers should I have? 2. So make sure you have the plus or minus. Is negative 48 a perfect square? No. So can I leave my answer as plus or minus the square root of negative 48?
No.
No, because that simplifies. So we need to simplify that radical. So if it's negative, what should be the first factor that you write down? Negative 1. What is the largest perfect square for 48?
8. 8 times 6.
We can't use 8 because it's not a perfect square. That's a perfect cube.
Oh, so that's up
16 times
3.
3.
It's going to be smart trick.
Now mark out the negative 1. What's the square root of negative 1? I. Mark out the 16. What's the square root of 16?
4.
4. So our answer is x equals plus or minus 4i square root of 3.
You do not like the unit. I mean, this one. Like this.
These are these.
Next one, number 6. Step 1. Is the x squared by itself? No. How do I get rid of the plus 24? Subtract 24 to both sides. So x squared equals negative 24. How do I get rid of the square?
You got to square root it.
Square root it. And what's the square root of x squared? X equals, can I leave it? Well, first of all, how many answers should I have?
2.
So I need to have the plus or minus square root of negative 24. Is that radical in simplest form?
Nope.
No, you need to simplify your radical. And what is the first factor I should write down if it's negative? Negative 1. And what is the perfect square for 24?
8 times 3 and so 6. I mean, 4 times 6.
4 times 6.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Mark out the negative 1. What's the square of negative 1?
Alright.
I. Mark out the 4. What's the square root of 4?
2.
2. So what's the answer?
2 times 3 is
Plus minus.
Yeah, x equals plus or minus 2i square root of 6.
I got a question.
Yes.
Would that ever be like in this, do you ever have to set it to 0 or something like that?
Number 7. I want you to solve number 7. Find the 2 solutions for number 7. Number 7. Derek, get your hand up. Look at you.
Brownie.
But you didn't do this one, and you should be working on that.
8 equals.
Wait. Okay, number 7. Is the x squared by itself? No. So the first thing we have to do is what? Add 23 to both sides. So that gives us 4x squared equals 5 plus 23 is 28. Divide both sides by 4. And that gives us x squared equals 7. How do I get rid of the square? Square root both sides. And when I square root it, how many answers should I have? So x equals plus or minus the square root of 7.
Oh.
Can that radical simplify?
No.
No. Because that's the answer. X
Did you roll if we put
plus or
1
minus
square
7.
root of 7?
1 square root of 7? Technically, you don't have to have that 1 up front.
But is it wrong?
Technically, it's not wrong. As long as you have the plus or minus in front of that one. Next one, number 8. I want you to do number 8. No.
It was a perfect square, right?
Huh?
It was a perfect square.
No, 2 is not a perfect square.
3.
3 is not a perfect square.
Dang, what? This is my answer. Nothing. There ain't no big picture.
All the colors are like, look. Oh, yeah, you're right. Why are you looking at that? It's 4.
Okay, number 8. First step is the x squared by itself. No. So we need to subtract 54 to both sides. So that gives us 3x squared equals negative 54. What's next? Divide both sides by 3. So that gives us x squared equals, what's negative 54 divided by 3? Negative 18. How do I get rid of the square? Square root both sides. What's the square root of x squared? X. How many answers did I have? 2. So make sure you have the plus or minus square root of negative 18.
Wait, what you mean?
Can I leave my answer like that?
Oh, I'm stupid. You can do 9 times 2. You gotta simplify it.
You need to simplify that radical. So first, if it's negative, what should be the first factor? Negative 1. And the perfect square for 18 was 9 times 2.
So 8 equals.
Mark out the negative 1. What's the square root of negative 1? 5. Mark out the 9. What's the square root of 9? 3. So the answer is x equals plus or minus
3i.
3i square root of 2.
I think I'll be going too fast and then like messing up. Or messing steps.
Okay, number 9. How is number 9 different? On the left side, we have how many terms?
3.
3 terms. And 3 terms makes it a triangle. trinomials, and these are a special kind of trinomial, and they are called perfect square trinomials. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor that trinomial. It factors real nice and quick. So put your parentheses, you're going to put a binomial in here, and that binomial is going to be squared. So go ahead and fill in that little format for me. So the parentheses squared equals 25. And we have to figure out what binomial was squared to give us that perfect square trinomial. So here's the formula you do. You square root the first one, you square root the last one, and you keep the sign of the middle one. So square root the first one, square root the last one, keep the sign of the middle one. So if I square root x squared, what is the square root of x squared? X. The middle one has a plus sign, and what's the square root of 16? 4. Now x plus 4, if you FOIL that or double distributed that, would give you x squared plus 8x plus 16. Now, we need to solve that equation. So how do I get rid of a square?
We got square root.
Square root it. So square root the left side, square root the right side. And what happens when you square root a square? They cancel, so bring down your x plus 4.
Equals 25.
Not 25, how many answers did I have?
2.
2. So what's the square root of 25? Plus or minus 5. Now, we want to get this x by itself. So what's the opposite of add 4? Subtract 4 to both sides.
So x equals to plus or minus.
X equals, we're going to put the plus or minus at the back. So I'm going to put the negative 4 out front, the plus or minus 5 at the back. Now this simplifies. I can get my two answers from that expression. So for the first answer, we'll do the addition. So it's negative 4 plus 5. 1. So 1 is the first answer. To get the second answer, we need to do the subtraction. So it's negative 4 minus 5. Negative 9. So we have 1 and negative 9.
This basically like what we did yesterday. Well, it's not what we did yesterday, but it's kind of, you get two answers like what we did.
We'll have two answers. Yeah, yesterday we had two answers. Mostly. Next one, number 10. If you have a trinomial, you need to factor that perfect square trinomial. So put your parentheses with the square, and it equals 49. And when you factor it, square root the first one, square root the last one, keep the sign in the middle. So what is the square root of x squared? X. We have a minus in the middle. And what's the square root of 4? 2. Now solve that equation. How do I get rid of a square? Square root it. So square root the left side, square root the right side. And what happens when we square root a square? They cancel. So bring down your x minus 2. And what is the square root of 49? Plus or minus 7. Remember, we need two answers. Plus or minus 7. And if I want this x by itself, what is the opposite of minus 2? Add 2 to both sides. So that would be x equals, put the plus or minus at the back. So I'm putting the 2 out front, the plus or minus 7 at the back. Now I can get my two answers. So to get the first answer, do the addition. So it's 2 plus 7. 9. To get the second answer, do the subtraction, which is 2 minus 7. Negative 5. So 9 and negative 5. Number 11, if you have a trinomial, factor it. So put your parentheses with the squares, and that's equals 16. Parentheses with the square equals 16. Now, square root the first one,
X minus 2.
square root the last one, keep the middle sign. So what's the square root of x squared? X, put a plus sign in the middle, square root of 4 is 2. How do I get rid of the square? Square root it. So square root the left side, square root the right side. What happens when you square root a square? They cancel, so bring down your x plus 2. And when you square root, how many answers should I have? 2. So this should be plus or minus square root of 15. So this time it was not a perfect square. So we're going to leave the radical. Now is x by itself? No. How do I get rid of this plus 2? Subtract 2 to both sides. So this would be x equals the plus or minus, put it at the back. So this would be negative 2 plus or minus square root of 15. Check your radical. Does that radical simplify? No. No. And can I add a negative 2 with a radical? No. No. So that is simplest form. So always check your radical to see if it does simplify. Next one, number 12. If you have a trinomial, what do you have to do with it? Factor it. So put the parentheses with the squares, and this time it equals 12. And remember, square root the first one, square root the last one, the minus needs to be in the middle. So what needs to go inside the parentheses? X minus 3. How do I get rid of the square? Square root both sides. So square root the left side, square root the right side. And what happens when we square root the square? It cancels, so bring down your x minus 3. And that equals, how many answers should I have?
Plus or minus.
2, so this needs to be plus or minus square root of 12. And to get this x by itself, the opposite of minus 3 would be? Add 3 to both sides. So this gives us x equals 3 out front, plus or minus square root of 12. Is that answer in simplest form? No, that radical simplifies. So if your radical can simplify, make sure you simplify it. So what is the perfect square for 12? 4. 4. So 4 times 3. Mark out the 4. What's the square root of 4? 2. So the answer would be x equals 3 plus or minus 2 square root of 3. Next one. Number 13. How's number 13 different?
X squared is bigger.
Yeah, it's bigger than a 1x squared. If it's bigger than a 1x squared, divide out the GCF. So the GCF is just that coefficient out front. So divide everything by 2. So if it's bigger than a 1x squared, get rid of the GCF by dividing it out. So we're going to reduce the equation. So these two cancel. This would be x squared plus what's 28x divided by 2?
14.
14x. What's 98 divided by 2? 49, and 36 divided by 2?
13.
18. I want you to finish number 13.
Oh my God.
Huh?
P-Money, what are you doing, baby? You still right? Cute. Good job, Chris. Good job. You got a car? You got a car?
No, I take it next.
You got a car already?
Yes.
What you get?
Okay, number 13, the first thing you should have done was factor it. And put your parentheses with a square. It equals 18. And what should have gone in the parentheses? X plus 7. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 49 is 7. Plus sign in the middle. How do we get rid of the square? Square root both sides. And what happens when you square root a square? Cancel, so bring down your x plus 7. And how many answers did you have? 2. So you need plus or minus square root of 18. To get the x by itself, what's the opposite of add 7? Subtract 7 to both sides. So x equals negative 7 plus or minus square root of 18. Is that radical in simplest form? No, so simplify it. And what was the perfect square for 18? 9 times 2. Mark out the 9. What's the square root of 9? 3. So x equals negative 7 plus or minus 3 square root of 2. Number 14.
That's awesome.
Yes.
You want to be a teacher?
I was just misguided. Number 14. If it's bigger than a 1x squared, what do we have to do?
Divide it.
Divide it. We'll divide everything by 4. So that gives us x squared with negative 72x divided by 4. Negative 18x. 324 divided by 4. 81. Negative 128 divided by 4. Negative 32. Okay, I want you to finish number 14. Quietly, number 14. You'll need to simplify the radical. Because it's not. And you need to add 9. Put that one down. We're on number 14, right?
No, I read something. He said he failed on purpose. He just did the rest of the question, makes it less. You won't be in this class next year.
You won't be in this class next semester.
Okay, number 14. The first thing you should have done was factor this. And what goes in the parentheses? X minus 9. The opposite of squaring would be the root of both sides. And what happens when you square root of square? Cancel, so bring down your x minus 9. And that equals plus or minus the square root of negative 32. So make sure you have the plus or minus so you have two answers. And to get this x by itself, the opposite of subtract 9 would be add 9 to both sides. So x equals 9 plus or minus the square root of negative 32. Is that radical in simplest form? No, so you need to simplify that. So this would be x equals 9 plus or minus the square root. And if it's negative, the first factor should be negative 1. And what's the largest perfect square of 32? 16 times 2. Mark out the negative 1. Square root of negative 1 is I. Mark out the 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So the answer would be x equals 9 plus or minus 4i square root of 2. Number 15, we are going to skip this.
Hallelujah.
Number 16, this will be the last one. Number 16, it says that the sides of the square are each increased by 3 centimeters. The area of the new square is 64 square centimeters. Find the length of the side of the original square. So we're starting off with a small square. Do they tell us what the length is of that small square? Did they say what the original length was? No, so if it's unknown, what could I call it? It's x. And then we're taking that little square, and it says each side needs to be increased by 3. What does that mean? Add 3. So now we're going to have a bigger square. And the length. They added 3 to the length. And to the width. They added 3 to the width. Now, second sentence, it says the area of the new square. So they're talking about the new square. So they're talking about this one. And oops, that kind of looks like a rectangle.
Didn't they say a square can be a rectangle?
A square is a rectangle,
Yeah.
technically, but a rectangle is not a square. Okay, so it says the area of that new square is 64. So if we're talking about area, how do you calculate area? Yeah, this would be length times width would equal the area. And looking at this red square, what is the length? X plus 3. What is the width? X plus 3. And they said the area is 64. 64 was the total area. Now, someone mentioned you could do side square, and that's true. But here we have x plus 3 times x plus 3. And what's another way I could write that instead of double distributing? X plus 3 squared equals 64. Now it looks like these equations we can solve it. So how do I get rid of the square? Square root both sides. And what happens when you square root a square? Cancel, so bring down the x plus 3. And what is the square root of 64? Plus or minus 8. To get the x by itself, what's the opposite of add 3? Subtract 3 to both sides. So that gives us x equals negative 3 plus or minus 8. We can simplify that. So find the first answer by adding, which negative 3 plus 8. 5, and a unit would be centimeters. To get the second answer, we'll need to subtract. -3 minus 8 would be -11 centimeters. Now, normally with the word problems, you can throw one of them out because it's going to be extraneous, so which one can we throw out? -11 can be thrown out. Why can we throw out the -11? Yeah, the side length cannot be negative, so the correct answer was 5. So that means the original length of that square was 5 centimeters long.